The Hoffman.
Anthony, was that an intentional open choice by you?
It was indeed, because you're not the one feeling pain. I am feeling pain, and we'll get into that, I think, a little later.
Yeah, we will. Anthony came to work out with me this morning, boys and girls, and I wish we could do 3 hours on it. Instead, we are going to talk about NFL Championship Weekend, one that actually breaks quite well for the Commanders in terms of their coaching search. We'll talk about that at 5 o'clock with Michael Phillips. We will get into Anthony and I's adventure this morning coming up later this hour. ESPN Seth Walder as well. 6 o'clock is when we're going to air the conversation that he and I had about an hour ago. Really, really interesting on the analytics side of the Lions' decision-making, et cetera, and just kind of how analytics are really used in these key coaching situations. We'll get into it all over the next 3 hours. Also, it's a Wizards game day, so Dave will join us at 6:15. But we only get to do this 2 more times, one after the Super Bowl, the other one's today. It's time for First and 10.
It's time to get the breakdown started. 1, 2, 3. First up, 10 observations.
Mr. Good guy and just boom, put it right on the ground.
It's First and 10.
Oh, what a championship weekend it was in the NFL. We wind up with a rematch, of course, of the Chiefs and the 49ers. Actually, the last Super Bowl week I went to was in Miami, Chiefs versus 49ers. We will be on Radio Row next week. That is very, very exciting. But the first thing I want to point out from this championship weekend is not something that I think you'd probably think is number one.
Number 1.
Did you know, dear football fans, that the Kansas City Chiefs are a defensive football team? Yes, the 2023-2024 Kansas City Chiefs have survived, gotten to this point where they are headed back to a 4th Super Bowl in the Patrick Mahomes era, which has lasted all of 6 years, because their defense is what got them here. Their offense has found itself, which is terrifying for the San Francisco 49ers next week, and has been a huge problem for all the teams they've dispatched along the way, including the Ravens yesterday. But the Kansas City Chiefs defense was the 7th in the NFL in DVOA. They were 2nd in points and yards allowed. They are, and I do not use this word lightly, great. And they did it yesterday without some of their most important pieces, including Willie Gay, their star linebacker, who would have been the best possible spy for Lamar Jackson, which is a tactic they did use at times. They just used Drew Tranquill instead, who has been great for them. Chris Jones is as good as it gets inside. Again, Tranquill in the middle, Gay in the middle, Nick Bolton in the middle. Their second level is pretty freaking good. And then on the back end, what they've done with guys like L'Jarius Sneed and some non-first rounders to solidify that secondary is nuts. And it just goes to the fact that they might have the most underrated coach in football, and maybe one of the 10 most underrated in NFL history, coordinating their defense in Steve Spagnuolo. His resume is outrageous, and it didn't work out for him as a head coach, and I think everyone's kind of written him off. I don't know if Spags wants to be a head coach. You would think after all of this and the success that he's starting to get the questions of, like, why isn't that dude getting head coaching looks? It didn't work out for him with the Rams in St. Louis back in the day. But damn, that guy can coach defense. They bottled up an offense that had just been crushing everybody. And they did it with Mark Andrews back. Like, the offense that crushed everybody got even better personnel-wise, theoretically. And sure, they get a little lucky on some stuff and some self-inflicted wounds that Baltimore has. But I am of the belief that you can, like, sometimes quote-unquote unforced errors are actually quite forced. I think that there are times that a defense has you so tight by the screws that you are just in a place where you don't perform well. There's a level of urgency that's irrational, and you don't act in ways, and you try to force it, and you wind up making mistakes because you're not thinking straight. And I feel like that's what the Chiefs did to the Ravens yesterday. They're super solid all over the place. They don't miss a ton of tackles. They're good in coverage. They're blanketing receivers all over the place. Their strategy is good. And so you have guys trying to do too much. And then when they do something, they're extra pumped about it. Zay Flowers, obviously the target here of kind of what I'm talking about. I hate to single a kid who I think is going to be a tremendous player. Already is a tremendous player, but he's going to have a great career out. But he's a young player in his first game of that magnitude ever. And it got to him. And the Chiefs had a huge part to play in that. So I just think that, to start, we're obviously going to talk about Lamar. We're going to talk about Mahomes. We're going to talk about the rest of this game, and then we'll talk about the NFC game on the back end here of 1st and 10. And there's a lot of huge takeaways from this very, very interesting pair of games. But to me, you're doing a disservice to intelligent football people and to really the Chiefs in the reality of who they are. The storylines are sexier on offense for any number of reasons. But this version of Kansas City is a defensive team, and they are awesome. And we'll see what they do against Kyle and what Kyle can cook up in 2 weeks. But damn, that defense is really, really good. And we talked about it all year. And now the receivers can catch, and they're going to the Super Bowl.
Number two,
Lamar. I feel a little bit bad for Lamar Jackson, but there's also the reality of what he has been in the playoffs, which is not the same guy as in the regular season. You face better defenses. It is reasonable on some level for your numbers to come down. I think that's what makes the great ones the greatest, is that they elevate when the stakes get higher instead, even though the competition is better. And for Lamar, it has just gone the other way. Teams seem to strategize differently, or maybe they're just more capable. They're the better teams. They have the better players. They can do more exotic stuff. I don't know exactly what it is. I do think that at number 3, we're going to get to the main culprit yesterday. But at the end of the day, when he's your MVP, you're relying on him to do better. And he missed a bunch of throws, and they put the game, for better or for worse, in his hands, and they lost. And they had one of their worst offensive performances in a long time. Now, I also think it's really important to point out, and to me, this is if you take anything out of number 2 here in 1st and 10, it's this. Just because someone has it doesn't mean they can't. And that's the nature of sports. And it doesn't mean that they will either, but it doesn't mean that they weren't capable. Lamar Jackson's capable of winning a Super Bowl. I would have no problem, obviously, contractually, whatever, what does it mean for the rest of your football team? But if Lamar Jackson's your quarterback, you have a chance. And that is that is a level that 7-8 guys in the league have, maybe even fewer than that. We're just based off their presence alone. You got a shot to make it into late January, early February. And Lamar Jackson is undoubtedly one of those guys. He is going to be deserving of second MVP. He is a dude. But he is not the dude in the same way that Mahomes is a dude. And I think that leads us to the biggest problem I had, and the reason why Baltimore lost yesterday, to me,
number 3,
is their play calling was abysmal. Todd Monken is very, very good at his job. He's coached in big moments. He coached Georgia on the OC side of things to a national championship. He's played for titles before. But yesterday, to drop Lamar back 40 times in the game, he had 37 pass attempts, and then he had a couple of scrambles. It's just unreasonable. That's not how Lamar Jackson is great. Lamar Jackson is great. Part of what makes Lamar great is he makes your running game better by his mere presence, because the way you can devote numbers to stopping the run changes because you have to account for him. Even if he's handing it off and it's not even a read option, just a little bit of a fake, the defense doesn't know that. They have to keep a backside defender home, because if they don't, Lamar could pull it and run, or the threat is there, and that changes how the gaps appear and your cutback lanes and who can scrape over and all these things depending on how you want to handle him. And they had 6 carries with their running backs yesterday. 6! And a game that, from a game flow standpoint, was never out of reach. They were down 10. And so, yeah, are there other issues yesterday we'll talk about in a moment, or that we've already mentioned, Zay Flowers and getting that ball punched out, and the taunting penalty, and Kyle Van Noy's penalty, and that one a little bit more sketch, but the Jadeveon Clowney Like, that's just a boneheaded play by a vet that's got to know better. You can't, get up under Mahomes' chin strap with the crown of your helmet. It's an obvious rushing the passer. There's all this kind of stuff that contributes. It's not a single factor into why Baltimore lost, but I don't think their offensive game plan gave them a chance yesterday. And it's not that I think Todd Monken's bad at his job. I think he did a bad job. I think he had a bad day, had a bad week. And I'm surprised that it got that far, because if I'm John Harbaugh, I come into that meeting and I'm like, nah, that's not what we're doing. We're doing what got us here. I'd be curious to know why they thought that was the best plan. Kansas City's too good for that. I think balance and being great at what you're great at is the way forward. And it seemed like Baltimore kind of forgot that they were the best team in the league yesterday.
Number 4.
My friend MJ Acosta from NFL Network put it excellently on Twitter. Patrick Mahomes is the boogeyman. And he lurks and he's there, and you're going to have to defeat the boogeyman to get where you want to go. And, man, can that dude boogie. I don't know what to say. I started 1st and 10 last week talking about Mahomes. There's kind of two different categories to me for GOAT, and this is not an original thought. But there's kind of two separate conversations. There's like who had the greatest career of all time, and Mahomes is a decade away from being able to have that conversation. The longevity of Brady is unmatched. The things he was able to do over the course of time are unmatched. But when it comes to the peak, when it comes to like if you could have any single season of any quarterback ever, I don't know how you'd pick someone other than this dude. And I don't even know which of the last 4 seasons it would be. He is so money in every key situation. Some of the throws he makes, the plays he's able to create, his management of the game, his sense of the moment, it's never too big, and he is competitive as all hell. Like that dude, I mean, the pregame nonsense with Justin Tucker, like it's all calculated. They knew, Kelsey and Mahomes, they knew they could get in Baltimore's head and get them off their game. They knew what they were doing. Is it annoying? Yeah, absolutely. Do you want everyone to just play a good, clean game? Yeah, but like if you know you can get in your opponent's heads, that's sports. Don't be the people on the other side who make it so easy to infiltrate your skull. Like Mahomes is as good as anybody we've ever seen. He is 3rd all time in playoff wins, period. He is 28 years old. There aren't enough superlatives for this dude. And the other thing too is Andy Reid is his perfect muse. They're perfect for each other. Andy wants to be super pass happy, and he found the guy that he can get away with it with. And not only can he get away with it with, it would be reckless not to use him this way. And Mahomes is completely unlocked, completely excellent, and put in positions to succeed. His creativity is on max, and just I could keep going. I'm not. You get it. Dude's incredible. And then last but not least on the AFC game, which is kind of on the
5.
AFC game kind of on the next 2 weeks, I am already tired of people complaining about Taylor Swift. She's on your TV for 1 second at a time. It's going to be okay. There are hundreds of millions of people around the world who adore her. Why? This isn't a music show. I'm not going to get into it. Next week, I do think we're going to have my friend Nora Princiati, who could equally talk about Kyle Shanahan's offense and Taylor Swift, which is what makes Nora. And we'll get into the phenomenon a little bit because it's Super Bowl week and it's going to be part of the story, whether you like it or not. But what I will say is complaining about it just makes you look like a noxious teenager. And as a grown man, and it's all men, as a grown man, actually, that's not true. There are women who are complaining about it too. As grown adults who are complaining about the most famous person being on television for 2 seconds at a time, I promise you're going to be okay. And not everything is for everybody. There are hundreds of millions of people that are now watching the NFL, or millions at least, tens of millions, who are watching the NFL that weren't before. That's cool. Maybe some of them will stay for life. You got new football fans. Cool. Great. Like, just let people enjoy what they enjoy. It's not bothering you. And if it is, like, that actually says more about you than it does about them or about her or about the TV executives. If I was the director, I will 100% admit, I think 10% less would be way more effective. The occasional check-in, sure. Do I think it's a little excessive? Sure. She's also probably the most famous person on the planet. So yeah, they're going to put her on camera. And I promise you, the game will be just fine. And you can enjoy it, and you don't have to complain. There are no bonus points for complaining. So just keep that in mind the next 2 weeks. All right. We will get to actually, tell you what, at the rate we're going, Anthony, we're just going to keep on rolling into the NFC game.
Number 6.
Number 6, scrolling over to the NFC game. Big takeaway from Lions and 49ers is it's not about the fourth down calls. It's about the execution on those fourth downs. It is about the mistakes that were made by the Lions in this game. Momentum felt like it was on San Francisco's side because the Lions kept making mistakes. If the Lions had not made the mistakes, the Niners don't get the momentum. And the Niners didn't have, there is no magical, the boogeyman is Patrick Mahomes. It's not a magical ethos that comes down and strikes a ball out. Jahmyr Gibbs has to hold on to that football. Josh Reynolds has to catch the football on multiple big spots in the game. I think Ben Johnson, who I still like every bit as much as I did before the game, probably needed to find a way to get Amon-Ra St. Brown back involved a little bit earlier, but he did go to him in a big spot. Ultimately, those are the mistakes that matter. The mistakes that matter are the ones in the terms of the execution. Dan Campbell's decision-making on the fourth downs was perfectly sound. The analytics data, which is real, no matter whether you like it or not, suggested it was basically a toss-up. Either go for it or kick it. It's about the same. And considering Michael Badgley, their kicker, who, by the way, couldn't beat Joey Sly out in the preseason because his leg is not big enough, kicking 46 and 48-yard field goals outdoors, those aren't sure things. So you go for it. And that's also kind of who you are. And you're confident in it, and you practice those situations. So, lo and behold, the people who want to dump on analytics, again, it's another group of people that just is telling on themselves. If I'm just going to be blunt about it. Don't tell on yourselves as someone who hates intelligence and information and data and being smarter than my gut says. Dan Campbell got here because he listens to the information and the data more than anybody else pretty much in the league. He's one of the best, if not the single best game management coach in the league. He knows what he's doing. And that doesn't mean that it's guaranteed to work. Otherwise, they'd be, 17-0, not 13-5 going into that game, or 18-0 instead of 13-5 going into the game. That's not a guaranteed proposition. But ultimately, it's about the mistakes. It's about the Gibbs fumble. It's about the dude not making a pick and instead the ball hitting off his face mask and going to Ayuk. One team made plays. One team didn't. It was decided between the white lines, far less than what was happening on the sidelines. Although I will say, in terms of
Number 7.
things that were happening on the sidelines, Greg Olsen made one of the best observations I've ever heard from a game analyst during the game. And I truly don't understand what Aaron Glenn was doing yesterday. So part of what makes the Kyle Shanahan offense so great is they subvert expectation. If you listen to Take Command, you hear Logan use that phrase all the time. What it means is, if we're going to put heavy personnel so that you match with heavy personnel, and then we're going to pass the ball because our heavy personnel includes Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle, who are tremendous ball catchers and wide receivers on top of, blockers. So we get you in run-heavy personnel that's not very good at defending the pass, and then we pass it. So Aaron Glenn, early in that game, seemed to have a really good solution. We're not going to play personnel. We're going to play down and distance. First down, we're going with our heavy personnel. If you want to pass it, fine, but you're not going to run it on us. And then for some reason, and by the way, it worked. They're up 24-7 at halftime. And then they started matching personnel more in the second half, and Kyle did exactly what Kyle does. He took advantage of it. They were able to run into light personnel. They were able to pass on heavy personnel, and the 49ers offense came to life, and we all know the final score. I don't really understand that. I'm not going to say there wasn't a reason. I didn't hear Aaron Glenn's postgame. Coordinators don't really talk postgame. I didn't hear anything as to why that change was made. But Olsen, an all-time observation on the broadcast, and to me, that's such an innovative thing for Glenn to have done, and I don't know why they got away with it. Meanwhile, on the other side, Steve Wilks, in one of the biggest plays in the game, does a tremendous job doing something that I've been waiting for an NFL defensive coordinator to do, which is to fake man when an offense lines up with the running back outside. Hey, okay, you want to line up with Jahmyr Gibbs out wide so that the linebacker will go chase him, and it's like, aha, we uncovered your disguise. You're in man-to-man. Well, they knew that the Lions were going to do that. Wilkes sends Greenlaw out with him. Then as soon as he comes back in, it's like, all right, we got the man tell. We're good. Come back. They played zone, and it messed up one of the Lions' biggest plays of the game. So coaching on either side, hey, what do you know? It matters.
Number 8.
Number 8. Speaking of coaching mattering, and I want to rope the first game back in. The first 15 from Ben Johnson to get this game started, and by the way, the first 15, I said the other game, from Andy Reid as well. You want to talk about starting fast? These guys are so good at it. The mix of personnel, the mix of formations, the mix of pass and run, just excellent stuff. And I know that they lost, and I know that they hit a dry spell in the second half. But you see yesterday what makes Ben Johnson special. That San Francisco 49ers defense, which is great, was all over the place. And Steve Wilkes did a great job, and those players did a great job of getting it back on track in the second half. But to expect to score 40 to win, is ridiculous. They still scored, 31? That's a pretty damn good day at the office. I think Ben Johnson, starting with the first 15 and then the ability to find it again in the fourth quarter and make it close at the end, really shows you what he's made of. And is that ultimately going to get him the job in Washington? No, but it's a heck of a data point on the resume. And then I think he's going to interview very well. And he is a leader of men. He is all the things that you want in a head coach from everything that you hear about. And who knows, by Thursday, he might just be the head coach of the Washington Commanders.
Number 9.
Number 9, a guy that you wish you could rewind the clock and have him be the head coach of the Commanders, but we all know how it went down. I'm really happy for Kyle Shanahan. I think he's the best coach in the NFL. And I know that he doesn't have a Super Bowl yet. Andy Reid does, Belichick, all these guys that do. He's been out-coached in games. He's had really bad, the Super Bowl where you're up 28-3, you get the credit for going up that high, but he definitely played a role in it going back sideways the other way. But at the end of the day, all Kyle Shanahan has done as a head coach is built an offense that everyone in the league is envious of and whose principles they try to copy. And while doing it, consistently been the head coach of the team with one of the best defenses in the league. The way they've built it, their philosophies, the principles of how they believe football should be played are so strong. He's an excellent, excellent hirer and identifier of talent, not just in terms of players, but in terms of coaches. And I just think that he has done it consistently better than anybody else. I know that he hasn't won it yet, but I go back to what I said about Lamar. Just because you haven't doesn't mean you can't. And I think his time is coming. I picked him before the season. Spoiler alert, I'm going to pick him in this game, even though I swear to God, if Mahomes won, I'd never pick against him again. But I just think that Kyle is as good as it gets in this league, that everybody should be trying to find their own Kyle Shanahan. And if something funky ever happens and he's available, everyone would fight. Owners would have a Royal Rumble to go hire the dude. And I'm happy that he's going back to the Super Bowl and has another shot to win it.
Number 10.
Last but not least, going so long that the music has ended. Dan Campbell, I thought, was tremendous last night in the post-game podium. He said it's going to be twice as hard to get back, and he was real with his guys. He knows how hard this is, and he knows that once you put in this work, that it becomes even harder to get back because you have to convince yourself it is worth doing it again, knowing you could go through the kind of pain that you are being that close from something so special. And what he has done in Detroit is, like what Kyle has done in San Fran, a model for other franchises to build on. So, yes, am I a member of the Dan Campbell fan club since I saw him on Hard Knocks? You bet your bottom dollar I am. But I am really, really thrilled for a guy that does it the right way, who cares, and who just is unapologetically him in a way that he doesn't have to apologize for. Sometimes that phrase is overused. Sometimes people need to apologize for the terrible things that they do. But Dan Campbell doesn't have anything to apologize for, and his realness at the podium in the postgame last night I thought was tremendous. I will play you the clip in Real Things, if not earlier on in the show. All right, that is our 1st and 10. First segment, 10 observations from NFL Championship Weekend. When we get back, we'll take your calls with your observations from Championship Weekend. It is the Ace Law listener line, 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Your calls on the Ravens season ending or anything else from Championship Weekend next. Taking your calls at 301-230-0980. The Ace Law listener line. If you're in a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888 Ace Law for more. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And we're live and in person this Friday, 106.7 The Fan versus the Team 980 live. Your favorite radio shows together for one night, off air, on stage, and uncensored. And if you have missed the news and you don't have your tickets, John Allen's going to be there. Yeah, Commanders defensive tackle John Allen, live and in person and uncensored. And look, I don't know John Allen very well, but I've interviewed him enough times in the locker room to know that that man will enjoy being able to being interviewed uncensored. There's just some words that are a part of his vernacular that I think John will do very well in this environment. Tickets are on sale now at BethesdaTheater.com. It's presented by Main Street Bank. Cheer local, bank local. Put their team in your office. Visit mstreetbank.com for more information. All right, to that Ace Law listener line we go. Your biggest takeaways from NFL Championship weekend, where we see the Ravens go down, the Lions go down, and the Chiefs and 49ers advance to the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. Lap, get us started, bro. What's up, man? How are you?
Hey, what's up, Craig? Hey, man, I wanted the Ravens to win. I was disappointed, but, man, I'm happy for Mahomes, man, and hope he wins again, man. He is just a beast, man. He's just not from this world, man. And I'm a big Kyle Shanahan fan, of course, so guess we'll see. Even though I don't want the Niners to win, I want to see Patrick win another one. So we'll see. Hey, let me ask you this, Craig.
What's up?
Does any of these coaching candidates change your perspective now for not giving Eric Bieniemy a fair shot? Because based on what I've seen, especially two top candidates, they lost, and their resume still don't look as impressive as his. He's been
when
to
did
the conference championship.
Remind me when Eric Bieniemy lost this year?
Well, I'm saying, because you were saying when I had a conversation with you last time, you said that his case for being a head coach doesn't look too good based on what happened this season.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that these other candidates, a lot of them don't have Super Bowl rings. They haven't got the multiple conference championships like Eric Bieniemy.
No, but the team that he
so
left just
I'm
went to the
saying,
Super Bowl without him, and the other candidates just got to the conference championship games, and they are in their, for McDonald's case, first year, I believe, as a play caller at this level, and Johnson's in his second.
I'm just saying those candidates who we were so high on a week ago doesn't look that impressive. All I'm saying is you got to understand this guy's been interviewed. I'm just saying, man. I mean,
No, I'm saying who did they not look impressive to? Because I was pretty impressed with Ben Johnson yesterday, and frankly, I was really impressed with McDonald the way he was able to turn it around in the second half.
So you still would want Ben Johnson, even though with the way it would happen. So that's more on the coach and not on him at all.
They scored 31 points against the
to
San Francisco 49ers and would have had more. Like, Ben Johnson didn't tell Jahmyr Gibbs to fumble. Ben Johnson didn't tell Josh Reynolds to drop a fourth down and another wide open. I believe that was like a 3rd and 12 that hit him. You can't say between the numbers because he wears number 8. It hit him in the dot at the center of the 8. It's not coaching. It's execution. You don't make those mistakes, they might have scored 40.
Yeah, but I'm just saying you make it as
what are you
one-sided.
saying? Like, you can't just, when I respond to your point, you can't just go, oh, well, I'm just saying. Like, I just made the counterpoint. I answered your question.
No, you made the counterpoint, but what I'm saying is it still is not clear cut, just like you made it seem like, because what's going on with what they did, they didn't get to a Super Bowl. So you're
100% results based. You're 100%, which if one of those coaches had won the Super Bowl this year, that's the one you would have wanted as your head coach, and nothing else matters.
No, I'm just saying with everybody trying to crap on Eric Bieniemy is he's not well deserving based on this season alone. and then you compare to other coaches, of course it's easier to pick those coaches, Craig, if they're winning. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day,
Okay, I think we've gotten to the problem
are.
of the misunderstanding. I didn't just like those coaches because they were winning. I liked those coaches because the process was better. I liked those coaches because what they're doing makes sense for their personnel. I like those coaches because what they're doing is innovative. I like what those coaches are doing.
But you were high on Eric Bieniemy when he came to the Commanders, and he was just coming off.
Yeah, and then he got more power and proved that was a bad idea. When he got the power to be in charge of the offense was bad. And your solution to that, you're just saying nothing, Lap. You're just saying nothing. You can't just keep going saying, I just saying. You're not saying a thing. Why did I just turn into Chris Berman, Anthony?
I don't know, man.
What made you more tired, that exercise class that you took this morning or listening to that circular argument of nothingness?
Definitely this morning.
Okay. We're going to talk about that more in a few minutes.
Yeah.
I wanted Eric Bieniemy to work here so badly. I wanted him to ultimately, when he got here, be the head coach and take over from Ron. Because I thought Eric Bieniemy would be really, really good at offensive coordinator without Andy Reid supervision. And if your response to a bad year, like this is the most power Bieniemy's ever had, and he took it. Now, are there other factors? Yes, because for all the power he had, he still was stuck in this organization essentially with the last owner because he didn't get a chance to hire staff. They didn't get a chance to be super aggressive in free agency or with quarterbacks and personnel. But at the end of the day, there's a job that he was asked to do, and he did a bad job. And it's the most important job he's ever had in terms of power relative to the organization. Because when he was with Andy Reid was the overseer of the offense. And he had a bigger voice than Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy was really important. And it took him a while this year in Kansas City to replace him, for sure. Some of their early season struggles, if EB's there, that might not happen. But they went to the Super Bowl without him. And these other coaches that now I'm supposed to think are lesser than Eric Bieniemy, according to Lap's quote-unquote logic, are like some of the best at what they do. What are we doing here? What are we actually doing? We're not entertaining. I'm going to put it this way, Anthony. Unless Eric Bieniemy surprises me and all of us, and there's an upset of the millennium, and he gets the job, I'm not taking another Eric Bieniemy call. It's not worth our time. It's not. It's rude to everyone else who isn't obsessed with this one singular person. It's just rude. Like, you all are smarter than this. And if you're not, like, you need to look around and ask some tough questions about yourself and be like, why am I so obsessed with this one person? Doesn't make any sense. Stop doing it. End of story. Up next, fun time. Anthony joined me for a workout this morning, and he almost died. That story, he's nodding along. That story is next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. A show that worked out together this morning. Young Anthony Haney tested his fitness with your boy. Shout out to the good folks at Elevate Interval Fitness, my home gym here in DC. Some of you might have heard of High Rocks, which is coming to DC in March. This is a fitness event that is got a lot of running. It's got lunges. It's got ski ergs. It's got sleds. It's got all kinds of stuff. It's a fitness obstacle course racing kind of inspired. It's hybrid racing. It's part running, part lifting. And the owner of Elevate is a guy named David Magida, who is the North American champion. David's awesome. I train with him, and my wife now teaches here, and my wife and I are training for High Rocks, and we've talked about it obviously quite a bit, and that includes here on the show. And Rachel has been trying to get Anthony to come to class, and this morning, Ant, you made the trip down from prep to Elevate.
I did indeed.
You almost didn't make it home.
I didn't. I'm not going to lie. So first of all, I had to, wake up earlier than I usually do.
Yeah.
That also required me going to sleep earlier than I usually do.
That didn't go well for you, did it?
No, I couldn't fall asleep. I was in bed like tossing and turning. I kept looking up at my phone. It was 12.
That's part of the problem. You can't be looking at the phone.
I'm just like, oh my God. But I woke up 6:30, got up, brushed my teeth. I was going to get some oatmeal, but I didn't have any more plastic bowls in my crib, and I didn't want to take a glass bowl, leaving them. I don't like doing that, so I rushed out of my house, and I looked up. It said 40 minutes, so I couldn't rush and go get some oatmeal. So I was like, I've done this before. I've worked out, no breakfast, just water on my stomach, and I was in for a rude awakening is what I'll say.
Yeah. There was, which is funny because I thought to myself two things. One, I was like, I should bring Ant some electrolyte supplement because I know that that's gonna matter, and I doubt he's bringing it. But he works out a lot, he'll be fine. And I was like, you know what? Just in case, I feel like I should bring him some fuel. I should bring him a honey stinger waffle. And I was like, nah, he was gonna have his oatmeal. We joked about it being the breakfast of Eliud Kipchoge, breakfast of champions. He'll be all right. I really wish I would have brought that for you. Yeah. And so my favorite thing is, so we do a quick tune-up, 5 rounds of some stuff, and then we get into the workout. And I will nerd out and indulge the fitness enthusiast amongst us and tell everybody the workout in a second. But it was a true HIIT class, so it's timed and it's all intervals, and a bell goes off, and you start working, and eventually another one goes off, and you stop and you go to the next station. But I will say in the warm-up, you came out hot. We had to do some shoulder tap push-ups. Yeah. Anthony's just knocking out push-ups.
Yeah.
He's a soldier of basic training. Just 1, 2, 3. He was going. I was like, either he's about to crush this class or this class is about to crush him. I don't know which one it is, but it's going to be one of the two.
You ain't lying, dog. I can do some push-ups. The mountain climbers weren't that bad. I'm like, this is going to be a piece of cake.
Yeah. So you get done with that. And then we get into the actual workout. So today was 6 stations, 3 rounds, which becomes important in a minute. Each station, this was a longer one, minute 45 at each station with 30 seconds rest in between. So the first station we went to was you did a dumbbell squat clean for 8, and then a push press for 8. And then if you finished that, you went back to the squat cleans. So that was station 1. Station 2, kettlebell step up. So you're stepping onto a nice high box. You got 8 of those. And then you got a deadlift to high pull with a heavier kettlebell. Station 3 was a TRX tricep extension. So it's an arm exercise. And then you do 4 burpees. And then gets to the nasty half. The nasty half was you did a sled push and then a pull back with just your arms. So you push the sled down, walk back to where you came from, grab the rope, and pull the sled on in. That was that. Then on the ski erg, you did a 150-meter ski, 10-second rest, repeat till the time's up. And then you get on the assault bike, which is the nastiest piece of cardio equipment on the planet for my money. It's that or a Versa climber. And you do a 10-calorie sprint and then take a 10-second rest. And then you do all that again, and then you do all that again. How'd you feel? And the first station was funny because like you hadn't really done a squat clean before. So that we had to do a little instruction there on that's a very technical lift.
Yeah, with the dumbbells, because I've done it with a barbell, I think it's a little bit easier. Never really did it with the dumbbells, so
yeah, we had to get through
I had
that.
to fine tune my mechanics, but that wasn't too bad. The step ups wasn't that bad. The tricep extensions.
Yeah.
Now when we got to the sled, oh my gosh, Craig! After the second round, well, actually during the second round,
I was gonna say in the first round, did you like we go through the room once? Where was your confidence level?
I was still feeling confident. Like I think I was okay. But when we got to the sleds on the second round,
Yeah, which by the way, I had
I
the
was-
order backwards. We went to the ski erg and then the sled.
yeah, I was ready to call it quits. I was like,
So
yo,
basically the exact halfway point. You got to the top of the
Yes.
mountain and we're
Yes.
like, I'm just gonna sit here. I don't want to go down.
because I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do another lap of this. The sleds killed me, and then the skiers also were killing me, and then the bikes. That was, I lie to you not, Craig. The last 2 times we got on the bike, I had my eyes closed, and I was just like, going through the motions, essentially, dude. I was
Anthony,
in
believe it or not, I took a
pain.
peek over and could see that.
I was in pain.
You were in pain /
I thought I was gonna pass out, man.
I thought you were gonna pass out.
Yeah.
We got off the bikes at the end of round 2, and I looked back, and Anthony looks like he's sleepwalking back to the first station.
Yeah.
And I just went, my boy's in trouble.
My eyes were big as, like, they were just expanded. Like, I didn't know what to do.
Coach Rachel is listening, a.k.a. my wife. She's the one who told me I got the order wrong. Sorry, babe. She goes, Anthony's eyes got bigger on the sled.
Yeah.
I saw the eyes closed. I saw the pain cave. I also thought he was going to pass out.
Yeah. I was ready to pass out. I think my second wind kicked in.
Yeah, a little bit. / you got back to a station that you could fake it better
Yeah.
and tried to recover a little bit.
Yeah.
I will say this: you were very springy as an athlete. Your when you did the burpees and had to jump up, I was like, dang, wish I could jump like that.
I was trying to not to jump so high. I don't know why. I was just.
You're like, I got to do something. Well, I got to do something impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that was a tough one. That was a tough one. And it takes a long time to get into that. It's a very specific time. I don't even want to say shape. It's conditioning.
Yeah.
And it's a different, if you're not doing that kind of conditioning, it ain't gonna go great.
Yeah.
So you ever want to come back?
No, I'll come back for sure.
I feel like you want redemption. I feel like you want to come back and you just want to be like, I'm gonna eat first,
Yep.
and I'm gonna get my hydration straight, and I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna show better.
I was just telling my dad that. I told him next time I go, I'm gonna make sure I eat, but also these next couple of weeks, I'm getting back in the gym. I gotta get back in shape. I'm so out of shape. I'm an athletic guy, so like
It's conditioning.
Yeah, what's in shape for me is like up here, and I
Yeah.
think I'm like really down here.
Got it.
But this is entirely different. So
Yeah, no. If you're gonna plan on coming back, we can give you some circuits to do.
all right, that's bad.
We can get it. What time are you gonna go to bed tonight? And how long did you nap today already?
So I've napped for I want to say an hour and a half. I want to say I napped for an hour and a half, and I will definitely probably be going to sleep before you and Rachel.
So before 10 o'clock.
Most likely.
Nice.
Yes.
Michael Phillips is next.
The Hoffman.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And it is a Monday at 5 o'clock. And really, lately, that's meant absolutely nothing. We've barely had shows on Mondays and had scheduling stuff. But traditionally during football season, that's meant that we've had Michael Phillips. And looky here, it's time to welcome back Michael Phillips.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Michael, welcome back to your home radio spot.
It just doesn't feel right. I don't know. I don't know what to say about this. It's the normal time, the agreed upon time. We haven't been here in so long. It feels, like we got to break it back in.
Yeah, I mean, should we do a proper warm up? I don't know what the procedure is here. Do we just get into the football?
What I know is, I've been a radio guy for a couple minutes now.
Yeah.
I guess it's September. Last week was the first time I really lost my voice while doing the radio show.
Oh, that's awful when you're solo.
Man, we slogged through the week. It was a slog of a week.
So this was like a long-term thing, not like, have you ever lost your voice straight up during a segment?
Yeah, so my producer helped carry it, obviously, and we had stuff ready to go and guests, but there was one segment where we didn't make the finish line.
Yeah, Anthony, that is his nightmare. That if I lose my voice during the segment, because it's funny because there's a lot of producers in radio that actually are younger guys or gals that want to become hosts, and that's actually their dream. Like when I was a producer, that was my dream. I would like my host to all of a sudden lose his voice, and then I'd have to do the show, and I would be Lou Gehrig, and they would be Wally Pipp, of course. That was how it went in my head. Not, hey, we'll get a sub tomorrow. That's not you. He keep hitting your buttons, you doofus. This is actually Anthony's nightmare. This is something that comes up every once in a while. I have lost my voice for moments that Anthony's had to carry the show. Anthony, that is actually your literal nightmare, is that you would have to host the show.
Yeah, Anthony.
I mean, for 3 hours is crazy.
Yeah, Anthony, there's only one line you got to know, and that is, Craig's feeling a little something, so we're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Hey, that's a great line, too.
Yeah, we've all been there. All right, so the Commanders had about as good of a championship weekend, in my opinion, that they could have had. Of course, it'd be nice to hire the Super Bowl winning offensive or defensive coordinator if the Lions or Ravens won, or assistant head coach in Anthony Weaver's case, if that's the direction they want to go. But Michael, realistically now, every single candidate that they would like to interview is available. They can hire their coach this week. What is the latest that you are hearing, to take your radio host hat off and whatever is left of your reporter hat on? What is the latest in terms of what we're hearing in terms of a timeline, and how realistic is it that by the end of this week, and when we have you on next week, we're talking about a new head coach of the Commanders?
Yeah, I was laughing. This is actually my last formal week of duties for the Washington Times. I'll write some stuff when we're down at the Super Bowl next week too. But the new kid Liam that said, "Hey, looks like it's going to be your problem," as the Lions are up 24-7, and then it became my problem once again, which is not a problem because that's my job. That's what I do. By my count, we've got 7 in-person finalist candidates on the board. I've obviously taken Raheem Morris off the board for obvious reasons. He's been hired. You got the 2 Ravens guys, Anthony Weaver, Mike McDonald. You got the 2 Lions guys, Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson, Dan Quinn, of course, from the Cowboys, Bobby Sloak of the Texans, and Eric Bieniemy was given a full in-person interview in-house as well. I would be astonished if it's not Mike McDonald or Ben Johnson, not in that order, Ben Johnson having the preference there. And I would be more astonished if this is not fully in the books by Friday afternoon when we all clock out. You don't need 4 days of deliberation on this. You've had weeks of deliberation. You'll get the in-persons with everybody wrapping up in Detroit tomorrow with Ben Johnson. They'll convene. They'll make their decision, whatever it is they want to do. I can't see any plausible reason you would need to take this into another week.
I wholeheartedly agree, which is why as much forward planning as we have done on this radio show, Thursday and Friday are completely blank slates as of right now. you've heard. Well, I think you've heard like kind of this. It's not defeatism, but like this inevitability. That's the right word. That's why you write in print and I sit here and blabber into a microphone. Although, don't worry, Michael, you're just about to be another one of us as your duties at Washington Times come to an end. There's an inevitability that this is spoken of, that it is going to be Johnson. But John Keim, who is as plugged in as anybody, obviously, and Adam Schefter, who is as plugged in as anybody, obviously, the ESPN brigade has come out and been like, no, like this is not done. We understand that everyone's just connecting dots here, but it has been made very clear that they are taking these interviews seriously, and this is not a foregone conclusion. And this group, the Harris group, has been very secretive and had things very buttoned up. What have you made of both the pushback from some premier reporters that it is not a foregone conclusion and the general lack of information coming from the Harris camp?
Yeah, and this reminds me, there's a Simpson episode where Homer listens to vocabulary tapes and starts having like a really big vocabulary, but then he stops listening and he forgets what the words for everything is. That's going to be me after a couple of weeks of
I thought you were going to say that was just me right then, right now, because that would also be it. That was the problem, as I need to go back and listen to my vocabulary tapes. Anyway, Michael, continue.
Yes. Look, you've got different sources who provide different information here, right? And you are absolutely correct. The Harris group is not forthcoming with details and information, and I commend them for that, right? Everything they've done, Craig, since I guess when they took over, has been designed to communicate to the public, the fans, we're not Dan Snyder. And this is just another way of doing that, is running a nice buttoned-up coach process where they take care of business quietly and professionally and bring somebody to a podium at the end of that process. That's not the way things have traditionally worked, so I think it's very important for them to do that. Now, the rest of the league continues chattering as normal, and of course we are tuned into that chatter and dialed into that chatter, and definitely the rest of the league thinks Ben Johnson is the guy to get. Now, I would say this, the only competition at this point is Seattle. I also think this is not going to be a cycle where Ben Johnson goes without a job. Assuming he wants an NFL job, he's going to get one, and I find it hard to believe he sat out this whole process not knowing he's got an option when the music stops and everybody sits down in a chair. You look at all the jobs that filled last week, and some of those teams would trade their guy for Ben Johnson right now straight up. So that leads me to believe some communication has happened behind the scenes. I think it's also very important to respect the process, and that's your Adam Schefter reporting, right? Is they will respect the process and have an open mind as they go through these interviews. But at the same time, Ben Johnson is not still on the board because he's not an undesirable candidate. He is the desirable candidate. Obviously, McDonald's giving him a run for his money right now. But in terms of him landing with a job, assuming he wants one in this cycle, he's going to get one. There's two left. That tells me he's got one of them.
Right. So then that brings the Seattle side into this. How big of a threat realistically are the Seahawks to win the battle for Ben Johnson?
Yeah, and if they want him, that could be a wild wrinkle here. And Ben Johnson's agent is going to be incredibly happy if that's the scenario, because you just add a couple more zeros to that check and that agreement and that commitment that they make. That's another spot, Seattle is, where you've got a really well-run organization. Obviously, the Allen family, Jody Allen's running that right now. There's a little bit of an ownership transition, but historically that has been viewed as one of the good spots in the league. So a last-minute bidding war would be very good for Ben Johnson, potentially very bad for the Commanders, but also I think that you would say they can still get a really good coach, even if it's not Ben Johnson, whether that's Mike McDonald or somebody else.
Michael Phillips, of course, 910 The Fan, MP on the mic, and wrapping up his football season's worth of work for the Washington Times with us here on the Hoffman Show. I do think it's kind of funny the way the money works with this on the Commander side of it, because Josh Harris and company spent $6.1 million, and that is cited as a reason as why they will now spend even more money, as opposed to being like, damn, now it's time to tighten down the purse straps because we just spent $6.1 billion. But it does seem like that is the case. Like, they spent $6.1 billion for this thing to return on investment, and they very much realize in order to have return on investment, they're going to need to do some more investing, is kind of my sense of it. Do you get the same sense?
Yeah, that's a great point. They're not going to get outbid. They're not going to lose Ben Johnson because they didn't pony up at the end when it matters. That's not why they're going to lose it. I mean, if Ben Johnson ends up in Seattle, he'll have very legitimate reasons for wanting to be in that organization and wanting to participate with that group. One of those reasons will not be they offered me more money. You get to the finish line here. When you find your guy, you make it happen with your guy. Josh Harris knows how this works. He's done this in multiple sports now, in multiple leagues. The return on investment of a great coach is one of the underrated things in sports, right? You look at, we often talk about, boy, how great is that college coach gig? You go coach Auburn for 3 years, get fired, and they keep paying you for another decade. On the other hand, like Nick Saban, whatever they're paying him, I promise you that university made 10 times more than that on investing in Nick Saban over the years.
No, that's a great point. And obviously I think you're seeing now in San Francisco, obviously in Detroit and in some of these other places that have this incredible duo of lead front office person and head coach, right, and cohesive and all of that, that's how you win. And winning, by the way, makes teams a lot of money, and that's ultimately the goal, both the winning and the money. A few more minutes with Michael Phillips here. Anything else from championship weekend in terms of McDonald and Johnson specifically, or Aaron Glenn or Anthony Weaver, that you see that you think matters in this coaching search? Or at this point, the hay is in the barn and it comes down to these in-person interviews?
I'm not a huge believer in the final arguments thing of like, well, who did better on Sunday, go hire them. That said, Mike McDonald, let's just take a second to talk about Mike McDonald. 36 years old, all this guy did was pants Kyle Shanahan offenses all year. Like the smartest guy in football, like everybody, get me a Kyle Shanahan guy, run that offense. Every time he played one of them, he just dominated them and tore them to little tiny pieces. 36 years old, by the way. Very, very impressive. Plays Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes gets a couple out of the gate. They put up a big fat 0 in the second half, and that's not because they were sitting on the ball. That's because he dialed it up. I don't know if he'll be a head coach in this cycle. What I know is those results are pretty dang impressive, Craig.
Yeah, no, that is for sure. I kind of wonder if he, like, obviously if he gets an offer, it seems like he's going to take it. He could have removed himself by now, a la Ben Johnson last year. But the one thing that I find really impressive about Johnson is he kind of took this year to study becoming a head coach. That's something Campbell has talked about, is like Ben got a little more involved in some stuff, asked some more questions. He wanted to understand what it's like to be in that lead chair. And I almost wonder if he gets skipped over this time, it could be a blessing in disguise. And wherever he winds up next year is a job that he's more prepared. Like, obviously going to be more prepared, but if he can kind of follow the model that Johnson did, I do wonder if that winds up paying off for him. And also for him to like think about staffing and things that he's probably never thought of before. Like if I'm him, I try to do a little networking this summer, because that is my one biggest concern for McDonald, is like, who's his staff versus Johnson's got this tremendous tree because he's worked with under a bunch of different people with a bunch of different experiences.
Yeah, that's why I think McDonald's not a terrible fit in Seattle. And if he gets that job, first thing I'd do is not fly to the facility, but fly to whatever vacation home Pete Carroll is in right now and be like, hey, you know how you're a senior advisor? What I want that to mean is, like, why don't you actually come be a senior advising me? If you could get that Pete Carroll hand holding inside the building for a year, that would serve him really well at this juncture of time. And I mean, heck, that'd serve a lot of people well, not just 36-year-olds, but I can think of some older than 36-year-old NFL coaches who could benefit from a year with Pete Carroll too. But in terms of assembling a staff, if you could keep him involved, I think that would make the job exponentially more attractive from both sides for Mike McDonald. But you nailed it. His star is not going to get dimmer. What he did this year, if he has a successful year next year, this isn't one of those one bite at the apple things. We talked about that. I know we talked about that last week with Aaron Glenn, where, hey, look, he may never get another shot at this. If he was offered a job, he probably needed to take it. I don't think that's the Mike McDonald story at all. He can be picky, a la Ben Johnson, and it would serve him well in his career.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, last thing here with Michael. Next week, by the way, we will preview the game more. When by the way, what's your Vegas schedule? When do you get there?
So we get there Sunday night. So I will do the Monday show in Vegas. I don't know if you want to talk to me Monday night. We'll I'll have your people call me. I know you book up well in advance, but
I think what we'll do is we'll try to just tape it. Sorry to the audience, Michael might not be live, but the information will still be just as good. But we could just have you. We can set up a thing from Radio Row, and we can do it that way.
Oh, during the week while you're there.
We could do that, or I was going to say we can get you from your broadcast position. I'll sit at my home studio and we can tape a bit on Monday, or we could just shift you to later in the week and you could join me on set.
We'll make it work. Media night Monday does not start until 8 p.m. Eastern. So there should not be any time conflicts there, which is good news for all of us.
Yeah, so we could either do that or we could do live on your way or from whatever you're doing between the end of your show and 8 p.m. Anyway, the thing I wanted to ask you about, we can plan next week off the air. I'm the one who did that. That's my fault, just to be very, very clear. But the other kind of NFL news from the weekend is the Eagles hired Kellen Moore, and obviously they got Vic Fangio. I think everyone's going to look at the Fangio hire and be like, yep, A+, got it. You hired the godfather of modern NFL defense. Good job, Nick Sirianni. What do you make of the Kellen Moore hire?
I'm really glad you mentioned this because I do have a take. I like it. I like it a lot for the Eagles. I think that if you're going to have a CEO coach like Sirianni, right, everything rises and falls on your coordinators as we learned last year into this year. And shoot, I mean, Detroit's going to go through that next year, potentially, have to, weather that or see how well Dan Campbell hires. But I like both of those hires. I still like the roster a lot. I still like Jalen Hurts a lot. I know that's not what the audience here wants to hear, but I think I saw the Eagles as like 30-1 to win the Super Bowl next year. I am bullish on that right now.
Might be able to find someone in Las Vegas who can take some money on that bet. I've heard that's a place you can do such things. I like Kellen Moore a lot. I like the Eagles a lot. I'm going to be honest with you, Michael. I don't love the fit.
Yeah, you can. That's your right as a radio host.
I will say if they had hired Arthur Smith, I would be a lot more scared.
Okay, I like that. Little difference of opinion. That's what makes good radio here. Kellen was the rising star a few years ago. Didn't quite pan out that way. I think he's still got, some fire in the tank. And I mean, the Fangio thing you mentioned, obviously, it goes without saying anybody is better than Matt Patricia at this point. So if they had named a wet paper bag as their defensive coordinator, I would still be lauding that move on the air because it is not Matt Patricia.
There is an incredible competition for worst Belichick assistant.
You're not wrong.
I mean, from what Charlie Weiss did, I think Weiss and Patricia are the 2 1 seeds, but there are other candidates. I mean, McDaniels, but at least McDaniels went back. Every time he goes back to New England, he's an incredible OC. Now, granted, that was with Brady, but still, he did it. He's got a bunch of rings. Weiss left New England, never good at football again. Patricia left New England, never good at football again.
You're telling me, a University of Kansas graduate, proud Jayhawk,
Michael, I covered a Charlie Weiss season.
Charlie Weiss.
I was in Lawrence for one of those.
Yes.
It's 6 months of my life I'm never getting back.
Turner Gill owes that guy the biggest thank you of all time for not being the worst Kansas football coaching hire of the 2000s.
Oh, that is, speaking of lists, the Belichick assistant list versus Kansas. Man, that's a summer show for you, sir.
The Venn diagram meets at Charlie Weiss.
It sure does. Michael Phillips, everybody, 10 a.m. to noon weekdays on 910 The Fan, which you can, of course, listen to on the free Odyssey app or on your car radio if you're driving down through Richmond. Michael, whether it is from Radio Row or on Radio Row, we look forward to talking to you next week. Safe travels out to Vegas, and I'll see you there.
Looking forward to it, Craig. See ya.
All right, that is Michael Phillips, everybody. When we get back to the championship games, Anthony and I break down the AFC championship game next, the NFC championship game at 5:45, and then ESPN's Seth Walder joins us at 6. He is a big part of their analytics department at ESPN, and wanted to get his take on the Detroit Lions making fourth down decisions yesterday. Walder at 6 here on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Oh, man. What a championship weekend in the NFL. Chiefs headed to Las Vegas to take on the 49ers after their win over the Ravens. San Francisco, of course, beats Detroit. And Anthony, has come to the time in the week where we review the NFL, and there's just 2 games to review.
So we're not talking about Taylor Swift?
No,
Okay.
we don't have to. Plenty of other
I'm
people
just
are
making
going
sure,
to. We're also
you know?
not going to hate on her.
Okay.
Something all discussed in First and 10, by the way. If you missed the beginning of the show, solid 25 minutes of analysis of all things. Highly recommend checking that out on the podcast. Just search The Hoffman Show in your favorite podcast app. But no, Anthony, here's the thing. As I said earlier, will there be a Taylor Swift segment probably at some point next week in Las Vegas? Yes, because I already texted Nora Princiati to come on the show.
Yes.
So here's my 2 ideas. And I will let people tweet me and see which one they like more. So Nora, of course, many people know the name because she used to write about the Commanders here in D.C. She worked for the Washington Times for a very short time, did some awesome work, and then was like, I'm going to go to Boston and write about the Patriots. And then eventually got hired by The Ringer. And when she was at The Ringer, her music and Taylor Swift interest turned into a thing. And she is now one of the go-to media people on all things Taylor Swift. She hosts a podcast, whatever, but she still does NFL work. So as I said earlier, she can as easily break down Kyle Shanahan's offense as she can the 10-minute version of whatever song is the 10-minute version. So my thought was we can do one of 2 things. One, we can do a fun bit where I ask her one serious football question, one serious Taylor Swift question, and just alternate back and forth. We just have a total yo-yo interview and go Swift, football, Swift, football, Swift, football. Or what actually might be, that's a funny bit. What actually might be more interesting is talking about fandom and talking about, what makes Taylor Swift so popular? What do Swifties have in common with diehard NFL fans? And, what has made each Taylor and kind of her universe and the NFL and its universe so damn popular in America? I think that's actually a genuinely fascinating discussion. But I'm always up for a good bit. So, which one would people rather see?
I don't know, man. That's tough.
I guess we could put it up to the people themselves.
Yeah.
So you can tweet me, you can email me, you can, I don't know, what other ways people. I mean, I guess people could call the show.
Yep.
I don't think we're going to take calls on that, but if you want to call the show and you feel really strongly and tell Anthony, hey, Craig asked this question and I feel really strongly, we could do that real quick. But yeah, that's going to be it. We're going to do one segment. Maybe it'll be a double segment, so 20 minutes at the most. And other than that, we're gonna talk about football all week.
Sounds like a plan to me.
Okay, cool. And now we talk about football. By the way, Anthony's I feel a little disappointed. I feel you want the full Swift breakdown.
Nah, not yet. I think I can wait. We got 2 weeks to,
Yeah.
get to it. So
We got time.
Yeah.
We got time, bro. All right. AFC Championship game. I gave my big takeaways earlier, and what was the biggest thing for you? By the way, my biggest one was that people need to realize the Chiefs are a defensive football team, and I thought that was the biggest difference in the game yesterday was how that defense played.
yeah, and I think you put it perfectly when you said they are a defensive-minded team, because in the second half, I do feel as though they got a little conservative and they went into win-now mode. And win-now mode is more so, running the ball, killing the clock, trying to, sustain drives. And if you don't, you're just going to lean on your defense. Also, field position was a huge thing. The Ravens often had to drive, one of their drives was from the 1-yard line. So they didn't have any short fields. And I think that's more so what, Andy Reid and Spags was, okay with, having those guys actually have to, drive the length of the field. And the Ravens, for some reason, they couldn't get things going. And when they did, Lamar would take a timely or a bad sack, or, the Zay Flowers fumble. That was huge. That would have been a huge difference in the game. But I think I look back to the end of the first half, I look back at the penalty by Jones, roughing the passer, that extended that drive, and then it was another play at the end of that half that allowed the Chiefs to continue to move down into field goal range. So I think those 3 points at the end of the half were like crucial.
Oh, it was the Van Noy.
Yep, at the start of the drive. Yep, that was it. Yep.
Yeah.
So those
whatever
two,
that was, unsportsmanlike.
Yeah, so those 2 plays right there, ultimately changed how the game was going to be played, because they had a 2-possession lead at that point at the end of the first half. So, yeah.
To me, it's about Ravens' mistakes. Like, I think on the credit side of the ledger, you have credits and debits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Credits, Chiefs defense.
Yeah.
Credits, the way Mahomes and company came out. And, like, I think it's hard to overstate how good Travis Kelce was in that first half. Like, it's not just that he caught a bunch of balls, and he wound up with, 11?
11 for 116 and a tud.
And 11 targets, right?
Yep.
Did he wind up getting a 12th target that he dropped? No, it was 11 on 11 targets. And so, yeah, he was incredible. But, like, his first 5 catches of the game were the first play of the game, drive starter, always really important. Then you had 3 third downs and then a touchdown. Like,
and the third downs were insane, though.
Yeah, gotta have it.
Yep.
Like, when you gotta have it, Kelce got it.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, that's big. So you got the credit there. And then, as I said, like, the biggest piece of credit is the Chiefs' defense holding this Ravens offense that's been studly all year to 10 points. But I do think you make a great point, and, like, the Ravens beat themselves in a lot of ways. And that's got to be really frustrating for them as a group, because they have been a team that's kind of been the bully all year.
Yep. And,
I mean, this is, I don't know whether this is actually true with bullies. I haven't read enough parenting books because it's not a part of my life yet. But we know the old saying, at the very least, is to beat a bully, you bully the bully.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the best way to defeat a bully is to punch him in the face. And certainly that worked yesterday for the Chiefs, and it started pregame. Like, I just was scrolling Instagram in the break there, and I saw the soundbite from Justin Tucker being like, I thought all that pregame stuff was in good fun, but they seem to be taken a little bit more seriously. And there's kind of that little bit of like, wait, are these guys crazy? You kind of got that vibe early with, like, Mahomes and Kelce. It's like, no, man, get out of our end zone. Like, this is our side of the field. Yeah, sure. Okay, you can warm up, but, like, not where we are. This is our stuff. Get out. Like, no, seriously, get lost.
Yeah.
Like, no, like, I'm sure when Travis does the podcast on Wednesday that he'll be like, I have so much respect for Justin Tucker. Like, it's just part of the game. Like, he's the greatest kicker ever. Like, Travis will be incredibly humble and not deferential. He'll give Justin Tucker his flowers because he deserves them, because he's the greatest kicker of all time. He might go to the Hall of Fame as a kicker. He's that good. But, like, eventually you're a competitor. And, like, Mahomes, same thing. Like, oh, yeah, greatest of all time. But, like, at the end of the day, like, we're just trying to send him, like, we don't mess around, and, like, he was in our way, so we got him out of the way. And so I think that from go, and also, like, with Mahomes, there's a little bit of the MJ thing that we saw during Last Dance. There's a little bit of that. He's got to get himself riled up. He's a competitive psycho, which is as high of a compliment as I can give a competitor. And I remember the CBS guys on pregame being like, don't poke the bear. And it looks like someone just poked the bear. Like, Justin Tucker was just doing his warm-up. He wasn't trying to poke the bear. The bear, it's when you're in the backseat of the car with your little sibling, and it's like, hey, you guys play nice back there. Don't touch me. And you grab their hand and you poke them. It's like, so-and-so poked me. Like, that's what Mahomes did to the Ravens. And then he destroyed them early in that game. But the other thing I'll say, too, about the penalties and stuff is, outside of the Van Noy one, I thought they were all good calls. And the Van Noy one wasn't a bad call. It's just the one where you're like, man, it's the playoffs. Like, relax.
Mm-hmm.
People are, it's fine. But technically, it was the correct call. And I think that Ravens fans, I have no doubt there's a bunch of sad, sore Ravens fans today. And that's not to make fun of Ravens fans. As much fun as that is sometimes. That's every fan base the day after they lose. But it's a lot of, like, blame the refs. They suck. They screwed us. The Isaiah Likely, there should have been a PI on that play. But, like, that's not a bigger play than Zay Flowers fumbling. That's not a bigger play than Zay Flowers taunting, which is 1,000% the right call. And those plays are the ones that cost you. And that, to me, is kind of what happens yesterday is the Chiefs are just solid in what they do. The Ravens beat themselves, and the final score reflected that.
Yeah, in terms of, like, the Ravens beating themselves, that's been, like, consistent all season. I feel like the games that they've lost, they lost to the Colts. Lamar had a couple of fumbles in that game. They lost to the Steelers. He had a couple of fumbles. They lost to the Browns, a couple of interceptions. So it's more so the Ravens, they could have went out and won this game. And I was talking to Zaire about it. He made me feel a little, dumb for saying it. He was like, because I had pointed out that the Ravens had 3 turnovers and the Chiefs didn't have any. And he was like, yes, that's, winning the turnover battle. And I was like, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny. Like,
it sounds so cliche. That's
it does. And it's like, we got to be better than this in terms of the analysis. But, like, it really is. I was having this conversation actually with Landfill today. Producer for B. Mitch and Finley, for those that don't know. But I was talking to Mullins about it. Because we were reminiscing about the Alex Smith trade. I can't remember what happened. I think we were making jokes about Reed and, oh, darn, he's not going to trade Mahomes to the Commanders now, I think is how that started. And Landfill is just being a goofball. But then we started talking about actually reminiscing about the Alex Smith trade. And I was like, you know what? I'm so glad I covered him because he made me realize the value of possession. And, he was pretty bad statistically through the 9 games that he basically got to play before the injury. And they were, it happened in the 9th game, but they were 6-2 to that point. So in those 8 games, like, he had barely thrown over 200 yards in any of those games. Like, he was awful statistically, but he never turned it over. And he converted some first downs and, like, shortened the game a little bit, but it was ugly. But you realize the value of that. And I think it's why, all these players like to make fun of the media for simplistic and okay, win the turnover battle. But it's like, then they get in the media and what do? Players, coaches, they give you the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's actually the most important thing. And, how you go about doing that, how you set yourself up for success is like the deeper next level layer of analysis. But I mean, that's huge. By the way, it's the biggest factor in the other game too. Jahmyr Gibbs doesn't fumble. I think the Lions are going to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
And the time and like, all turnovers hurt, but the timing and the placement on the field and all that stuff is super duper important too. And the Ravens, obviously about as bad of a place as you can fumble is inches from the goal line. By the way, speaking of that play, sidebar for a moment. For every single person that tells me we can't change the touchback rule on the fumbling the ball out of the end zone, because you don't want guys to reach for the goal line without consequences. Guys are going to reach for the goal line. Zay Flowers reached knowing the consequences, and yes, he suffered them because the Chiefs actually recovered the ball. They had to complete the whole thing. And if that ball had been recovered in the end zone by the Ravens, I believe it would have gone back to the spot of the fumble because you can't advance the ball on a fumble. So your argument that, well, guys will just reach for the pylon, reach for the plane, that's what they do. And if the defense doesn't recover it, they shouldn't get the football. End of story. Please change that rule this offseason. Okay, thanks. We'll talk about the NFC game next on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Reminding you that you can come see us live on Friday, 106.7 The Fan versus the Team 980 live at Bethesda Theater. Your favorite radio shows together for one night and one night only, off air, on stage, and uncensored. Plus, if you haven't heard the big news, Commanders defensive tackle Jonathan Allen is going to join us on stage as well. Tickets are on sale now at BethesdaTheater.com. We're presented by Main Street Bank. Cheer local, bank local. Visit or put their team in your office. Visit mstreetbank.com for more information. Again, John Allen joining us Friday for our live event. Our plan is to do the show from the event beforehand, so doors aren't going to we'll probably be done by the time the doors open, but I don't know. Who knows? Anthony, maybe people can just come hang out and see our show on Friday. If you have a ticket to the event, can we just open the place early?
That would be dope.
It would be. I don't think that's how this is going to work,
Nope,
though. That seems like it would probably be some more cost incurred and some complications of sound checks and whatever else we got to do. I'm trying. There is a fun game that I think is going to make the final cut. I'm just going to say that. A fun game that I'm going to host at the expense of other people. I really want to get a small game show mic. I want a Bob Barker mic.
Like one of the little tiny mics like James Smith-Williams had?
No, not like the tiny social media mics. Like Bob Barker, like from, what's it called? Not Wheel of Fortune. Big Wheel, Plinko, Price is Right.
Price is Right.
Yeah, the music is only sitting right here. Idiot. Anyway, the point is, we won't have a Price is Right game. We will have some fun games. I don't want to say too much yet. It's going to be a great time. It's all uncensored. It's all off air, and hopefully no one gets fired or there's no fights. That's what I'm hoping for. I know nothing other than I'm supposed to show up and eventually talk about football. So there's that. All right. Speaking of talking about football, the NFC Championship game, and again, I gave my full breakdown of it earlier, or biggest takeaways, I should say, earlier in 1st and 10. But what to you was the biggest thing yesterday?
Momentum is definitely a thing. And also,
funny you say that because there's going to be a big talk about momentum in our visit with Seth Walder at the top of the hour from ESPN's analytics department.
Man. But I just think Dan, he didn't. I'm not gonna say he didn't have a feel for the game, but I feel as though the first 4th and 3 might have been. The first 4th down attempt might have been more, understandable because it's in the first half. The lines are rolling. All they have to do is really, Josh Reynolds just have to hold on to the ball. The second one, I think the Niners had just taken the lead. You can, tie it, or you can, go for it on 4th and 2. Ultimately, they didn't get it. But I just feel as though in that moment, I think you go for the tie. You lean on your defense to try to go out there and get a stop. But at the same time, you can't be too critical of him because of, that being what got them just there. But I just think just understanding the time, the situation in the game, the momentum has swung. I think you take the points as opposed to being uber aggressive.
So here's what I would tell you on the second one. I think if you have a better kicker, I agree with you. I think that you are just in a better position not being down. But it's not guaranteed that you make the kick. And I think sometimes when people go for it and they don't get it, the what people think is the alternative path is you gave up 3 points. You didn't. You gave up a chance at 3 points, and something that from that distance, especially outdoors in San Francisco where the wind is notoriously whippy, and with Michael Badgley, who's just not that good of an NFL kicker and has a very, very short, he's hyper accurate from short distance, but he does not have range. A 48-yard field goal's for him, on the season, a 70% proposition. So I think to say or to pretend like that's not a huge factor is incorrect and missing a huge part in the decision. But I will also say this. So the first one is first drive of the second half. And to go up 3 scores, I do wonder, and this is the thing that I want to say the analytics don't capture. But here's where it gets muddy, right? Does it change the strategy for Kyle? Down 2 scores, you can still be really aggressive running the football. Like the 49ers are still the 49ers. If you're up 3 scores, does Kyle feel the need to be a little bit more aggressive and drop Purdy back, or does he stick to the game plan? And that's where, to be clear, the analytics factor for that. What analytics do is tell you, if you do this and you get it, your win probability is X, based off the entirety of whatever data set you're looking at, which is not quite the entirety of NFL history, but like decades of data at this point. If you're up by X amount at this point in a game, you're going to win it 70 whatever percent of the time, right? And if you miss the kick or you miss the 4th down, it's this. If you make the kick, if you get the 4th down, it adjusts your win probability, and you have to look at that information and make a decision. And you even have a kind of an analytic that takes all that into account and is like, you should go for it. And that's what the analytics said. The ESPN's model had it as 0.3% go for it. So you could really justify either way. But where I think the coaching element does come in is understanding who you're playing against and where there's strategy. And like, you have to know Kyle Shanahan well enough to know making this affects him how. And if we don't get it, what does that do for him? And it's not so much about momentum versus it changes the way the game is played strategically. And that's where the analytics are important to consider, but having a good scouting report to match with it can inform your position, especially when it's close, especially when it's just a 0.3% more success here or there. But it's like, it's a 50-50 proposition, right? Because it's like, you know, if it's 50.1 versus 48.8, that's 0.3 difference. It says you should go, but it's still pretty 50-50. And so if you know that there's more reward on one side of that equation, like you have a coach who's going to do something dumb, if you get the 3 points, you're maybe more inclined to get the 3 points. So it's hard. There's a lot to it. I don't think I actually did that great of a job of explaining it there, but like the strategy element is hard. But I think the bigger factor is, again, the identity piece of it's who they are. It's all, his team is ready for those moments because that's who they are. And the bigger factor is like, you know, they have a drop. That's brutal. It kills them. And then on the other side of it, you know, 49ers go down, score, and then Jahmyr Gibbs fumbles on the first play. Like, if the Lions are just able to sustain a drive there, they might win the football game. Mm-hmm. And if they get a field goal on that drive or a touchdown or even just punt and pin San Francisco deep, but they get a couple of first downs. It's not what happened. And so I think that's the bigger thing. Like, the Detroit mistakes in the second half, which is why, like, if people want to take shots at Ben Johnson today, he called a great game. They scored 31, and they probably score 40 if they get Josh Reynolds to catch 2 balls and Jahmyr Gibbs to not fumble 1. Like, that was the difference in the game. Yeah. And not to put it all on those guys. Obviously, the defense could have stepped up. I talked earlier about how I think Aaron Glenn made a strategic error in changing something he was doing that was working. But that, to me, is where that game goes sideways. All right, let's get to this conversation with Seth Walder, ESPN analytics guru, next on The Hoffman Show.
show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And it's our pleasure to welcome back to the show ESPN Seth Walder. He leads up their analytics department. And Seth, interesting couple days for you. You literally wrote an article 4 days ago for ESPN.com titled something along the lines of "How Fourth Down Decisions Actually Work." And lo and behold, here we are. Dan Campbell in the spotlight, not shockingly, considering the coaches we're talking about here for his decision-making against the Lions. So congrats on your prescience, I guess is where I would start.
Thank you. Well, it's just, odds are there's going to be a fourth down conversation, and it does when big games are played, and it certainly happened. It's not new, but it's going to keep going.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Okay, so let's just get right into it. Most direct way I can ask it. What did you make of Dan Campbell's decisions to go for it on those 2 fourth downs in the second half yesterday, and why?
I think that in both cases, they were effectively toss-ups. So when you look at our numbers, they show a super close decision. In both cases, we narrowly preferred going for it. So I'm talking 0.3% to go for it and 0.2% to go for the first one. So really close calls and close calls too. If you look at another way we like to look at it, would be the difference between the break-even percentage, the percentage required to convert in order for you to justify going for it, and what we expect them to have. They were super close, so right on the edge. And to me, that means either option is acceptable, and there has to be that situation. I think we criticize coaches a lot of times for punting typically when we say they ought to go for it. Had Dan Campbell kicked in these spots, that would not have been a situation where I would have criticized because it was so close. But the same has to be true the other direction. And I do think that ultimately we shade that way. And I will say this, I think that the people often say, well, does the model take into account this? Does the model take into account that? And there are certainly factors that are outside the purview of the model. And that's why I say when it's close, okay, well, maybe there's something that the coach can justify one way or another. To me, the biggest thing that we're missing here is kicker specific stuff. And that should have really led the Lions in an outdoor game with a below average kicker. That should have only led them more towards going for it.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. So I'm going to ask this specifically, and you can answer as generally as you want in answering the specific question, but like how much of personnel does a model like yours factor in? And I guess like the 1B to that's actually kind of the more important question is like, how different are the numbers that Dan Campbell is looking at and that his analytics people are looking at that might because like the analytics people that work in the NFL don't go to ESPN.com's analytics site and be like, oh, this is what that. No, they do the math themselves, and they might have slightly different formulas. So how different are the formulas that Campbell is considering versus, say, what you're looking at?
So, okay, a couple of good questions in there. How different? I don't know. There's no way for me to know exactly what the Lions are looking at. I will say the Lions, Dan Campbell, they tend to be one of the most optimal organizations when it comes to game management. They hug very close to what we would say are the correct decisions most of the time. He's in the conversation, I would say, for best game management coach in that way, or best fourth down coach. Are there factors like that could be considered that would be outside the purview of the model? Yeah. And could it be even game specific, right? Could you have a situation where you say, we're going against this opponent, they have a really weak run interior, so maybe that's going to push us a little more one way, but their corners are, I think, kind of have the advantage over us. So if it's fourth and long, maybe we nudge the other way. Those are reasonable factors. But if you are factoring those in, and I think this is important, that has to work in both directions. A lot of times we hear coaches give this explanation of saying, well, the analytics folks said, we should go for it, but they don't usually throw them under the bus, but they might say, well, given X or given Y, I decided to punt or kick. What you never hear, and I think what you have to hear, is Well, the folks upstairs, they said numbers wise we had to punt, but I just felt like we were running all over them. So I said we're just going to go for it. And we're gonna run the ball here. And you have to be willing to have that error in both directions. There's also limits to those errors, so that's why a lot of times it's like we'll say, okay, the break even conversion probability is like 38%, say, right? And we estimate that your chance to
So
convert
just real quick, Seth, for the audience, can you kind of give us a 2-line definition of that break even percentage?
Right. So when I say break even, what I mean is the chance of conversion in order to justify going for it. So let's say you're facing a situation, it's fourth down. We could say you need at least a 38% chance to justify going for it. Okay. Now, ESPN, might estimate that you have a 50% chance of converting. There's no world where you can justify, I don't think, that 12% gap. Like you can't. If it's really close, it could be one of those things. Our tackle is out. Oh, their corner is playing really well. But if it's a big gap, I just don't see how you can justify going for it. But again, coming back to Detroit, these were small gaps. I think either option really was justifiable, and I think that the criticism because there's been so much criticism of Dan Campbell, I think that's been misplaced.
Obviously, like in some ways, these models factor in everything because you're taking in all of the data from all of the games, and you're not like you're kind of relying on the mass of data to ultimately even out some of these intricacies of individual situations. And I think that's like another interesting factor here, right? Like your model has incorporated results from bad weather games, from indoor games, from tackles being out, tackles being there. Like your model ultimately does all of that. I know one thing that we've talked about in the past is like kind of that game feel stuff, the strategy, the momentum. And is there like how does the model account for, let's say, the first decision that Campbell makes? It's 4th and short, relatively short. I think it's 4th and 3 on the 28-yard line, and they have a chance to go up 3 scores. Like I know that there is stuff in the model in terms of like win percentage, or in the models, I should say, in terms of win percentage that ultimately help inform that decision. So I guess what I'm really asking is like what kind of data is Campbell considering as he considers going for it versus not in a situation where a lot of the traditional analysis revolves around go up 3 scores at this point in the game.
Yeah, so it's the 4th and 2 from the 28. They're up 14.
Yeah, 4th and 2. Yeah.
Left in the third quarter. You're right. Yeah, you could look at it sort of simply and say, hey, we can go up 3 scores here. And there's value in that, but that is baked into the model. So the model is looking at the situation that's saying, okay, what's the probability we convert if we go for it? What's the win probability if we convert? The win probability if we fail. And then again, what's the win probability if we convert the kick, and win probability that we miss the kick, weighted by the probability of making the kick. I do think it's really important to say you cannot guarantee. There was no guarantee you were making that field goal, right? It's a 46-yard field goal outdoors. So probably you make it, but you also might not. It's all baked in. When we come down, when we say 90.5% chance to win if you go for it, 90.3% chance if you kick, that is all baked in the positive and negative outcomes. When it comes to momentum in your question, right, the sort of game feel, what I would say about momentum is I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying no one has ever shown any evidence that it does. Like people have tried to show. I'm open to seeing evidence, but I haven't seen any yet. So if someone's out there and they want to prove it statistically, then let's see it. But to your point, when past games had momentum too, if that existed, and so in some ways you could say that's baked in. But again, show me it's real without just like hand waving that the belief that it is real.
No, I hear you. Seth Walder is our guest from ESPN. He heads their analytics department, and this is where I struggle. And I think a lot of people that play, like, I believe in analytics, I believe in numbers, I believe in data in a major way. I thoroughly enjoy our conversations and having you on and reading your work. And Like if I was a head coach, I would rely so heavily on data. Like if you like the reason we all love sports is because of like the emotion and I think there's a huge psychology element as well. And I'd be curious if anybody could study like kind of that intersection of like because my best retort, my best attempt at playing like devil's advocate to the momentum thing would be like there is a lot of psychological study about something that would kind of be a cousin of momentum in terms of like fear and anxiety and what's happening within the brain and the body on those lines and how a group can move towards one and why like that's why you get like leadership is so important because you can change that momentum and you can dispel those fears. The problem, I guess, is when you bump into analytics is none of that is quantifiable. None of that is in any way measurable, even if all of us as human beings have experienced it as part of the human experience in or outside of sports.
I think it should be quantifiable if it's real though. So like when with momentum, right? People say, okay, what causes momentum? Like a big turnover, right? Or right? I think people say, oh, that's a momentum
So
swinger.
like for instance, right in the game yesterday, you have the Ayuk catch off the helmet. Like it felt like the game swung on that moment. Your model's not going to go win percentage. Niners way up at that moment because there's no score change, anything like that. But I think everyone watching it is like, wow, that's such a moment,
Oh, wait, hang on though. Disagree. The win probability moved dramatically because they completed like a 50-yard pass, and
sure,
so
fair. Yeah.
I think typically what happens is people are saying momentum when they mean is the last play just changed the win probability significantly. And so like if momentum's real, right, then after a turnover, we should expect that teams win more than their win probability suggests, right? Like or they should score on the next ensuing drive more than they otherwise would. But we don't see that. And so if there's a psychological component, then it should bear out that if we can predict it, right? Can we say in the moment before it happens it's going to happen? So I think people just tend to mistake momentum, which should be essentially like future win probability. It's almost like a derivative of win probability, saying like it should be higher than expected going forward, with what actually just saying, oh, win probability just changed significantly.
Right. So there's a huge play. Maybe that was due to a tactical shift. That's the thing that actually changed the game, not some nebulous momentum. Like the win percentage changed and because of a big play, because Kyle Shanahan figured out what Aaron Glenn was doing on defense.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think say that again. You're saying the win probability.
So
changed.
like when we talk about like the idea of momentum versus some like big play, like the big play, the 51-yard gain changes the win probability because it's a 51-yard play that sets them up in scoring position. But also sometimes like what is confused as or what you're saying is what is confused as momentum might actually just be an upward trajectory in the win probability for one team based off of, say, an adjustment a coach made where now each play they're having more success than they had before, but ultimately over time it's not going to outperform the model, if you will, because it's not some psychological momentum thing. It's an actual difference on the field in the plays that are made.
I see what you're saying. I don't know. I know what I was trying to say is more just that what changed was Ayuk caught a deep ball, and so that moves the win probability, and that's it. The Lions had a 73% chance to win after the Ayuk pass, right, which was a big drop from 84% or something like that right before. What I'm saying is, at that moment, they had a 73% chance to win. The Lions did. Someone arguing for momentum would argue that they had a lower chance to win, and so that's measurable. I think if we can identify plays that are supposed momentum swingers, then teams should win more than their win probability suggests. I haven't seen that demonstrated anywhere. I think I'm open to it, but until it happens, like I think our default should be that win probability is win probability.
Right. And so if the Lions come back and score the next drive, then your momentum changing play is dead, and that happens far more often than I think people would want to admit. By the way, one more question for you real quick on yesterday. When Harbaugh went for it inside his own 20-yard line in the other game, in the AFC game, what was Was that a smart move? Because that felt insane, and then we forget about it because they get it and they just continue marching on, and ultimately they lose the game for other reasons. But that felt crazy at the time, and I just since you probably were paying close attention to that and might have had the numbers in front of you, I figured I would ask real quick.
Yeah, so this is down 10, 4th and 3 at their own 18, right?
Yeah.
With 8:47 left. Yeah, so we supported that move. That was a go for us. I think that I'm so glad you brought it up though, because they convert and they lose. So I haven't heard anybody talking about that play today until you mentioned it.
Right.
I think it just goes to show this sort of asymmetry of the situation we have, right? Like where if they had failed and they lost, then are we talking about that today? Like, is that running on all the shows? And that just shows because we are trying to measure the decision, not the outcome. And so much of what determines about what gets talked about is the outcome. And that is a mistake. So, yeah, that was a good decision. It was probably controversial because they get it. Everybody just moves on. The drive continues. I do think about one last thing here, which is that when this is the asymmetry, I think, that causes fourth down blowback, which is that if you convert a fourth down, the drive just continues. And so, like, the biggest play of the drive has yet to occur because, like, later they will go score a touchdown or later they will throw an interception. And so that's the big play. But when you fail the fourth down conversion, then the biggest play of the drive was a failure. And so it seems like the fourth down is so catastrophic. And that's why we end up talking about fourth downs only when they don't work.
Right. And in that particular case, like you go for it, you get it, you still lose. It doesn't guarantee anything, which I think where people get really twisted is like it's all percentages. And, you know, a 55-45 is a go is still 55-45 go, but you're going to be on the wrong end of it 45% of the time. And that's still going to feel like a lot. But that's the game. Is that last question for you? Seth Walder from ESPN is our guest. There's been a lot. We don't need to name names unless you want to call anybody out in particular. Go ahead. I'm kind of in the business of I don't give people starving for attention. But there have been thought pieces today on analytics and all this, just people trying to take their pot shots. What to you is like the biggest miss on the narrative today?
Biggest miss on the narrative.
By the way, while Seth thinks of his biggest one, if you want a couple of really good ones, you can head to his Twitter page at Seth Walder. Highly recommend doing that. But what's for the radio audience here who might not have Twitter? Here's
the mistake I think a lot of people make, which is they say, 0.3%. That's not enough to justify going for it instead of the default kicking. There is no default, right? First of all, like every time you're making a choice, kick, punt, go. Those are your three options. And again, I'm saying that either option was acceptable for the Lions. But
right.
If we're following the quantitative analysis, if something is saying 0.3% better, it's just better. You would, if someone gave you a button and said you have a you can increase your chance to win by 0.3%, you can hit it or not hit it. Of course you would hit it. Will it matter? Probably that's probably not going to be the difference in the game, but it could be. Or, I think that, the analogy I used was like if someone offered you $100,000 salary or $100,000 and $300 salary, what do you take? Or like my colleague said, like if you're sick and you're offered two treatments, one has a 50% chance to work and one has a 50.3% chance to work, and the doctor's saying, and this is the truth, right? Like these are the two numbers. What are you choosing? So I think there's a lot of, it's okay. Like this is a complicated question. It's good to talk about it. But there are some arguments that I think fall flat.
Yeah. My favorite one was that data scientists are making more in the NFL than they are at Amazon. That was a fun one. That was a personal favorite. That's just me. I say that people need to get out more. Seth Walder, ESPN, appreciate your time as always, sir. Hopefully we'll catch up here fairly soon down the road.
Craig, if I can just correct you on one thing, I'm not the head of our analytics group. I don't want to put that out there.
Okay.
Brian Burke does our fourth down models, and I'm just the face of the team. But there's a lot of hard working folks that I work with.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that a lot. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Wizards game day. Oh, we talked a lot of football, obviously, today. Championship weekend in the books. We are on to Super Bowl 58, which you'll hear right here live on the Team 980. Of course, our show will be headed to Las Vegas and Radio Row next week. I'll be here Monday. I got a short show while I'm traveling Tuesday, and then Wednesday through Friday, we are on Radio Row in Las Vegas. I already have some people booked. Incredible lineup pending and a bunch of other stuff in the works, and we're excited to go out there and be at the epicenter of the football world. But as I said, it is a Wizards game day, which means it's time to talk to our guy, Dave Johnson.
Time to get the radio party started.
Blocked by Malone, pull a volley. Oh boy, did he stuff him. Left wing pull, it's there. Oh, that's a pool party. Near the basket, slam right in. Oh, they're stealing the slam. You better go off. Intercepted by Kispert. Kispert now, foul line. Oh, slam. Ooh, that'll jar your preserves.
It's time for Dave Johnson on a Wizards game day.
Kuzma for three. Oh, it's there. It's there. Big shot.
On the Hoffman Show.
Hey, you better go off.
Dave joins us from San Antonio. Dave, have you had quality Mexican food since you arrived? And if not, why not?
Well, no, because I'm just not that sophisticated. I'm sharing that with you and your listening audience. I had a salmon Caesar salad, which is probably I could get anywhere in the country, but I got it last night. So I've had a very boring excursion food-wise here in San Antonio, although I'm staying in an area that's got quite a history about the Pearl Brewing. And it's a hotel they turned, it used to be the Pearl Brewing Company. They turned in to a hotel, which is quite fascinating and has quite a story that I could start to tell you, but that would take the next 15 minutes. But the real story here in San Antonio, that while I've not had good food, you probably saw the viral video over the weekend, or I guess every video is viral, about the Spurs mascot, Coyote, catching the bat.
Yes.
Did you see it? So what was amazing and was certainly questioned by the announcers on that video is this bat was flying around the court here in San Antonio. If you remember years ago, Manu Ginobili actually caught the bat.
I do remember that, yeah.
Right. Well, this time, Coyote is out in a Batman costume with a butterfly, or I guess a bat net, and they're playing bat music, but it's a real bat. And so it really looks like a setup or something that they would stage or script for during one of the timeouts. But I've seen a lot of trained animals in my life, including, the Atlanta Hawks. And it's a little bit scary. On their home, whenever we've been there for their home opener, a real hawk comes down from the top of the arena. And all of a sudden it gets dark, and you realize the darkness is from the shadow of being cast by their wings. I mean, hawks are huge birds, and you're just thinking, my God. I hope it lands on that guy's arm, because otherwise we're all going to scramble. I don't think you can train bats, and so I did ask, and apparently the mascot here in San Antonio, Coyote, is so clever, so fast. He saw the bat flying around. He ran down the hall, got into his Batman costume, and came out and caught the bat. And the bat's okay, by the way, but the way he was able to turn that in. I don't know if there's any into an act, basically, even though it was really catching a bat, because, a bat flying around can make patrons uncomfortable. That's just a hunch.
I would not be psyched if there was a bat
right.
flying around.
No.
Yeah, no.
And bats are good for us, and they eat bugs and all that other kind of stuff. But it does make you kind of nervous. I think it has something to do with a Hitchcock movie or whatever. But the point being, if there's some mascot awards for best impromptu act, it's got to go to Coyote, the Spurs mascot.
Who could possibly argue with that? No one.
Yeah, no, I don't think. No, I don't,
absolutely no.
I think we settled it.
Yeah, we did, and that's our time. No, I'm just kidding. We have more time. Dave Johnson is with us from San Antonio, the home of great Mexican food, which he has not enjoyed, and tales of mascot bat bravery, which he has. Now we know the highlight tonight, Dave, is the two former teammates, Bilal Koulibaly and some guy named Victor Wembanyama, I think it's pronounced. Yeah. They'll be going at it. And obviously seeing Wemby in person is a sight to see. I still think the best one of the season so far. Well, there's been a couple of great just reaction memes. Guys getting dunked on, whatever. They're just like, what happened to me? Joel Embiid walking by him the other day, just being like, wow, okay. And then, of course, Joel decided to drop 70 points, so there was that. But you got to see him a couple weeks ago. You see him again tonight. What was your first impression of the rookie phenom?
Again, it's just he's just so smart. I get the other things you see, and obviously, he's got the athleticism. The old joke about you can't teach size and that type of thing. But having said that, you can't. You can't just. It's not just about being that tall. It's how you. In some ways, you're even more challenged to be able to navigate an NBA basketball game with that frame. And he does it seemingly effortlessly. It just smooth is the word that comes to mind. And I have to say it is cool, and it's going to be cool tonight to see. They were not on the court a lot at the same time last week or whenever we played the Spurs at home, but they were at sometimes. And it's the same things we've been saying about Bilal Coulibaly. He's smart. He plays the game well. It's yes. Victor Wembanyama certainly can, poster the entire league and et cetera, but you appreciate just his understanding of subtle nuances of a game that is more akin to an NBA veteran. So, no wonder everybody, this time last year was all the, he's going to be number one. Of course he was number one. And just seeing it develop. And also you realize that he clearly is going to be the face of our league for some time, and just how he represents the game and how he respects the game is good for anybody that's a basketball fan, I think.
Yeah, without question. He's averaging 20 and 10 on the year. I'd actually be curious, Dave. I want to circle back. We must talk about Marvin Bagley because we have promised a Marvin Bagley conversation. And then, of course, we had the news last week, and he had a great game on the weekend over against his former team and all that. But, I look at Wembanyama's numbers, and he's averaging 20 and 10. I'm kind of scrolling through the games tonight. Luka's averaging 34 a game. We've seen the 70 pieces from Embiid and then whoever else had it the other day. We've had enough 70-point games that it doesn't immediately pop to mind who the other guy was. That is where we are with scoring in the NBA right now.
Right.
As a guy who's covered this league and called games as long as you have, what's your kind of take, if you will, on where we're at with the pace of the game and the ease of which, especially individual players, are accumulating these massive amounts of points?
Well, and it has to do, in my opinion, just with the 3-point shot is more and more. Even since I've been doing it 28 years, and I've just watched that become more a part of the game. And even when I started, it was part of the game, but not like it is now, and not like. Everyone shoots threes. That I think about when I started on this journey in the mid '90s, that wasn't the case. So I think that speaks to a lot of first of all why Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game. I know it was a different time and era, is still so impressive because there was no 3-pointers for Wilt. Not that he was going to take any 3-pointers if there was available, but. We talk about it now that when you keep a team to 115 or 120, that's considered a great defensive performance. Where once upon a time and not that long ago, we talked about teams that were the great defensive teams were holding teams around 100 points a game. So it just it's happened. It's the way the game has evolved. I hate to keep using the word evolved over time, but it's everything from you go back to the 70s and the hand check and et cetera. It's everything has trended to make the game more offensive, and that's probably true of a lot of sports. But then certainly the ability and relative. I was going to say ease, but at least ability and the number of threes that are now a part of the game. I think that speaks to why we keep seeing these, 70-point totals.
No doubt. And of course, Luka, I literally just said his name. Luka was the other guy who had 70, had the 73 against the Hawks the other night. All right, Dave, wrapping up here ahead of Wizards and Spurs tonight. Let's talk about Bagley. Just what has he been able to do here that has kind of unlocked him in a way that a former number 2 pick had seemed to have been battling to find his way in the league, and just the freedom that he's playing with. Like, what has stuck out to you about not only his individual performance, but what he's meant for the Wizards since he's been here?
Well, he showed as a starter with us before Daniel Gafford returned, he can be a 20-10 guy. Again, it was a small sample size, but also you respect, he has been coming off the bench and being a 14-7 guy, 14 points, 7 rebounds. Again, I can't speak to why it never clicked in other places, because he's first of all a smart player. He plays the game the right way. You don't have to call a play for him. He's going to make things happen, and he is just relentless. We've noticed this in the few weeks that he's been with us, that a play is never over till he says it's over. In other words, until he's given his last bit of effort to keep that rebound alive, and that's how you get. Look, the Wizards are coming off a season high 16 offensive rebounds on Saturday. The reason the Wizards' record is what it is, that is, and you can look it up, and I don't even know how many times they've out-rebounded opponents this year, and they did on Saturday, but I think it's only like 4 or 5 now. And the Wizards would have more victories, plain and simple, if they had, had the players, quite frankly, and Marvin Bagley is one of those players, to be a better rebounding team. As much as we talk about, it's three-point shooting and things like that, the ability to compete on the boards, it means in so many ways. It either means you're getting a defensive stop or, second chance points on the offensive end. So, and he's coming to Washington, and this, again, is people, I think it's important to know that when we signed up for this, when I say we, I mean, I think a lot of fans were saying, all right, let's build it over. But then when you lost, 30-some games, it does get frustrating, but you get excited when you get a player like Marvin Bagley who says, all right, this is my chance. This is my audition. This is my opportunity. I want to be somebody in the NBA. I don't want to just be the number 2 overall pick that never really reaches full potential. And in a team game, you can't force yourself to reach full potential, but here he certainly has that opportunity, and that's exciting. If you're a Wizards fan and you're over the next year and a half, you're looking at, all right, who's really going to stick with this team going forward, and he has a great chance to do that.
Yeah, without question. I've been so impressed with him, and it's also just been nice. We talked about what he did as a starter when Gaff was out, but I think for the team, having the 2 of them and having 2 real bigs has been a huge, huge thing. First for Wes, and then obviously for Brian Keefe, who we will certainly talk about more this week, his early impact on this club. So we will do that ahead of Wednesday's game against the Clippers. And Dave, I'm hoping to see you on Wednesday, so that'll be fun. Enjoy the rest of San Antonio. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll see you back at Capital One Arena in a couple of days.
I'm looking forward to seeing Capital One Arena. We'll probably get you to come on a little bit just so you can, we get you ready for Las Vegas, because you're going to knock it in Las Vegas. I can't wait till you're at Las Vegas next week and I can listen to the show out there. So we look forward to seeing it in a couple of weeks. But as always, appreciate the time, and I'll keep looking for stories like the successful trapping of bats, but also humanely done.
Story time with Dave is really what we do this for. So that sounds great. Thank you, sir. Enjoy the game tonight. All right, that is Dave Johnson with us here on the Team 980, live from San Antonio. That is an 8 o'clock tip tonight, so you get a little bit of BetMGM tonight coming up at 7, and then you get pregame at 7:45. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, we wrap things up for the day with real things real people said into real microphones. Wrapping up here on the Hoffman Show. Team 980 always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And do not forget, 106.7 The Fan versus the Team 980 live is this Friday night at Bethesda Theater. Your favorite radio shows together for one night, off air, on stage, and uncensored. Plus, special guest just announced today, Commanders defensive tackle John Allen. Yes, that is right. Jonathan Allen will be with us on stage in Bethesda. Tickets are on sale now at BethesdaTheater.com. And especially, I mean, they started going quicker over the weekend, but especially since our announcement of John Allen this morning, tickets are going fast. So you definitely would like to get them immediately. BethesdaTheater.com is the location for that. And this is all thanks to our good friends at Main Street Bank. Cheer local, bank local, put their team in your office. Visit mstreetbank.com for more information. All right, Anthony, what do we have on the show tomorrow?
It's a great question, Craig.
Well, it's Tuesday, which means we should have Linnell.
We should.
Now, that's been a little bit sketchy as of late, but we should have Linnell. I do believe that is in the works. Vibe check, as we will have also interviews for multiple head coaching candidates.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always a chance of news. I do think that there's a very small chance that there's anything that comes to agreement. But I guess if they've interviewed everyone today and tomorrow, and if Ben Johnson's the last guy they interview tomorrow, and they're like, you know what, we're good. This is our guy. I guess tomorrow we're kind of on coach watch. A lot of people seem to think it's going to be Thursday, but
yeah, I mean, also tomorrow's just a weird day because apparently they're supposed to be meeting Johnson in Detroit, but also Dan Quinn is supposed to be getting his in-person interview in
that's
DC.
what I'm saying is are we on coach watch tomorrow
I think
during this hour of the show, right? So let's say they meet with Dan Quinn for 3 hours in the morning. Quinn gets to the facility at 8 a.m., 11 o'clock, they're done. They get on Josh Harris's private jet. It's Harris, it's Peters, it's everybody. I think the problem, though, is aren't they also interviewing Aaron Glenn?
Tomorrow? I don't know. I know
I
I
feel
saw
like they
Johnson and I saw Quinn for tomorrow.
I mean, they have to interview Glenn.
Yeah.
As well. One, because they've told him they could, and two, I hate to just be blunt about this, but they need to interview Glenn to satisfy the Rooney Rule. Mm-hmm. They will take that interview seriously, to be very clear. Aaron Glenn is a legitimate candidate who should be getting coaching interviews, but without it, they are not in compliance. So they have to interview Aaron Glenn. It sounds like, but aren't they also interviewing McDonald? Or did that happen today? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's too many moving parts.
Too many moving parts. I do think Johnson's tomorrow night. So maybe they get to Detroit around 1 o'clock. They interview Glenn from 1 to 4, take a break. Johnson, 5 to whatever. And if they get into the first hour with Johnson and they're like, this is the guy. And then it's like, do you want a 5-year contract for X amount? Yeah. Somebody call Adam Schefter.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe as we're going off the air tomorrow. God, that would mean we'd have to stay. Do you have anything tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night, Tuesday, January 30th. No.
Okay. I hope that's not what we have to deal with. But just saying, there's a chance.
Could be interesting.
There's a chance. News loves to break right as our show ends.
Yes.
Beal trade, Shepard fired. All kinds of stuff. All right. So we're on Coach Watch starting tomorrow. Right now, we're on a watch for real things. The real people said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Oh, those numbers you flashed, Anthony, that is not a lot of time. Let's go with this. Brandon Ayuk, big catch yesterday off that poor Lions defender's helmet, but he knew that he was going to get lucky.
Tell us all about that catch.
Before the game, a ladybug landed on my shoe.
Come on.
And y'all know what that means. So that's all I can say, because other than that, I don't know. Just great luck. God was with us today. Great win. Bang, bang, Niner gang. It's crazy.
Bang, bang, Niner gang. It was a ladybug, Anthony. Lady Luck was on the side of the Niners. Damn it!
Which catch was more impressive, Ayuk's or Lamar's?
That's pretty close. They were both sick. Like Lamar's awareness and his ability to just scoop it and go was pretty sick.
Yeah.
Ayuk, the concentration is incredible. They're both lucky, too. I don't know. It's a great question. It's a great question. All right, I'll ponder it and perhaps give you a straight answer tomorrow. It's the Hoffman Show on the team.